Now, coming to hackathon and a multi-year initiative, you're right. My own experience has been a hackathon that is focused at the client level, business unit level, where people, hundreds and thousands of people, come together for a short period of time. They generate a lot of ideas, but 7 or 8 on 1,000 get selected and implemented. Now, is it right? Is it wrong? I think that's a wrong question to ask. The AI can now tell the associate, look, you're trying to solve this problem, but why don't you try this? Why don't you add this? Why don't you drop this? And then, as he does that into his idea, he finds that his score keeps going up. The implementability and impactfulness of the idea improves. And at some point, he says, okay, let me submit. So it's eminently possible. I've seen it work. I've seen it work well.
In the last episode, Alexis Samuel laid out what he calls a baker's dozen, his 12 blocks framework that has helped him activate grassroots innovators in large organizations. From the CEO's call to innovate, which we often refer to as the buy-in, to psychological safety, from branding a program to measuring what really matters to understand whether it has a return on investment. It was really a masterclass in the architecture of innovation in corporations. But then, who are the people, that is the employees, that respond to such calls? So we want to hear the human side of this architecture. And this is what the second episode is about. So today we move from strategy to people, from building the system to understanding what it feels like to operate as an activated innovator within that system. We talk about who the grassroots innovators really are, what activates their curiosity and drive, and what makes them stop participating. I personally learned something new about this last one. Alexis Samuel spent 35 years in corporate world ensuring excellent delivery of IT services. He never held innovation in his title. Yet, he activated thousands of innovators throughout his career, and in his last chapter, he even shaped a program specifically dedicated to activating the grassroots innovators of a global company with over 250,000 employees. He is not your common go-to person when it comes to innovation. Yet, his wisdom is priceless. I'm your host, Ileriana Caccianico, an innovation strategist at heart, and this is Activate Innovation Lounge, a podcast dedicated to all the leaders with or without innovation in their title who want to activate innovators, innovation, and innovation culture in their organization. If this sounds like you, follow us wherever you're getting your podcasts. And now let's welcome Alexis Samuel back to the conversation. Alexis, welcome back to Activate Innovation Lounge. It is thrilling and privilege to be able to talk to you for 2 episodes in a row and to unpack so much about activating innovators, or as you rightly refer to them, grassroots innovators. As we move into the second part of our discussion, I would love to dive into the innovators' point of view. I want to understand from you a bit more. Who are the innovators? Who are people that are so driven to push their own boundaries, as I call, and test new things that get involved in initiatives like this? So, in your experience, who are the grassroots innovators?
A good proportion of the innovators, be it in services or in manufacturing or any industry for that matter, but the ones that I know, come from the doer community. They are the
Who is the
actual
doer
doers,
community?
the actual employees who are doing stuff, not the management and top management that is reviewing stuff. You know, so it's the folks who are writing code, folks who are answering a call, the folks who are bolting things together in a factory, or the ones who are designing. That is where uh, a good chunk of innovation comes from. The second cluster of associates that are innovating, that have contributed, are the ones in functions, legal functions, HR functions, operating groups, and others, because they are grappling with a lot of operational problems, functionality gaps, workflow issues, and employee dissatisfaction issues all the time. So you give them an opportunity to say, hey, why don't you innovate? Why don't you suggest ideas? We will, implement them, or you yourself could implement, you empower them, then they get motivated. Now, the question is, I think, asked in the beginning of your beginning, what motivates them? Why do they come?
Yeah, exactly.
The answer is, Illyriana, is not pretty. Not all of them come. Uh, it is a hard, slow burn. They are very skeptical initially, and they say, "Hey, we are already busy working 12 hours a day. Where do we have time to do this?" So the initial months and right through, I would think the effort should be to communicate. You innovate in your area of work. Don't innovate outside. Whatever you're doing, bring your thinking cap on. Gone are the days where the management's expected you to leave your mind and brain outside the door when you come into the office. Bring it on. Think innovatively in your day to day work. It's part and parcel of your work. It's not something different. I think that message has to go. And once people learn and they see their friends receiving awards for having written a piece of code very smartly and very differently, or come up with an additional functionality on a package that they were working on, the message spreads very fast, saying, hey, this is not something different. This is what I'm expected to do on a day to day basis. And somebody is here to recognize and reward and encourage, and the momentum picks. But it is never easy. I have had situations where 100% of a team, which means all the associates participated. I've also had teams where less than 20% participated. So the leadership is important, continuous messaging is important, but most importantly, the message that this is part of your work, innovate within the construct of what you do on a day-to-day basis. I think that keeps the crowd coming in.
And when they come, why do they say yes to initiatives like that?
First of all, they come voluntarily. There's no pressure at all. The whole thing is voluntary. Peer pressure works. They see their peers innovating, getting recognized, going up the stage, talking about it, doing a podcast within the organization about it. And the rewards and recognition program, if designed well, spurs people on. And there again, some are easy converts, some are never converts. One has to live with that bunch.
But then the other thing is also we have to be aware of that, especially if we're running, don't want to call them centralized, but very issue-based, problem-centered challenges for the entire organization. There will be people who will feel peripheral to being able to solve that issue. So that's why sometimes inspiring them to join the teams would lower that barrier of engagement rather than seeing them solely as individual innovators. Have you seen examples like that in your career when not only engineers, but people from other walks of professional life joined the challenges, and that team formation lowered the barriers of participation?
That's a good point. People do feel peripheral or feel that they are in the periphery depending upon the themes that have been selected. Now, I have faced this before, and the solution to that is uh, for the leader of that function, let's take a legal team or the HR team or the accounting team or the operations team, is to work with his core group and say, hey, I want to drive innovation in my function. Now, in a legal team, I can't ask them to ideas for writing code better. or writing additional functionalities or coming up with disruptive ideas. What are the top four themes that we should focus on in our function? So, what I would suggest is kind of an iteration zero in agile projects, which is have an iteration or a hackathon within the core team to identify problems. Don't innovate, don't run into innovation first.
Mhm.
First, run into coming up with the backlog of themes that need to be addressed in that function, which means it is well within the remit of everybody else in the larger team to contribute in some shape or form. Launch that innovation drive and then get the grassroots in that group to solve, come up with ideas to address those themes. Then the issue of, how can I contribute here? I'm too much in the periphery, doesn't apply to me, not part of what I do. All these, wooden legs not to contribute can be addressed.
Yeah, and you highlighted a valuable point that sometimes you can definitely crowdsource, have crowdsourcing campaigns to identify
Yeah.
the clusters of frictions that people are experiencing, but they don't have a place to communicate them or a channel. So, like, you just collect, and then based on the most frequent evidence of certain frictions, you can use those as a foundation to the to could be a hackathon, could be a challenge, a longer term. Which brings me to the question: we know about hackathons. We know that. Actually, I recently read a research somewhere that less than 55, not even 55, it was a very small percentage of solutions generated during hackathon that become products or that happen. Many of them die in a matter of few months, even those, the good ones. But comparing a hackathon, call it like a one-time intensive focus on problem solving, 1 day, 2 day, versus an extended call for a challenge of few weeks, which ones do you think have better engagement rates and higher likelihood to generate solutions that do matter for the business and for the employees? Did you have a chance to to look into the data for those, or what does your gut feeling tell you
Sure.
about this?
I'll come to this in a minute, but I don't want to miss a train of thought in the previous point that we discussed about iteration zero and finding problems to
Please.
solve, etc. Right? Now, let us now fast forward to today. We all talk about agentic solutions. Now, what are agentic solutions? They are deployment of AI capability across a full workflow that spans one, two, or many functions, many databases, but addresses one user journey. And where the AI is able to take decisions and operate independently with suitable human oversight, auditability, and recoverability, etc. Now, where is the struggle? How do you decide the backlog of workflows that you can agentify? That is where what I said earlier will make a lot of sense, where you go down to the business process and ask teams to identify what can be done better, what needs to drop, what are the gaps, what can be automated, what can be eliminated. Apply this, simplify, combine, automate, eliminate philosophy. Come up with the whole thing, and then you can innovate, or you can straight go into, okay, now let us agentify this whole thing. So that becomes a nice fundamental business process engineering kind of an effort, driven with innovation and design thinking in the background, to feed towards a backlog of areas that can be agentified. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but I just didn't want to miss the connection there. Now, coming to hackathon and a multi-year initiative, you're right. My own experience has been uh, a hackathon that is focused at the client level, business unit level, where people, hundreds and thousands of people, come together for a short period of time. They generate a lot of ideas, but 7 or 8 on 1,000 get selected and implemented. Now, is it right? Is it wrong? I think that's a wrong question to ask. The purpose of a hackathon is to innovate at scale under a pressure cooker situation, which is time boxed. It has its place because it is it is very intense. It yields a lot of ideas. Within 3 days, you're done and you get working products out. Maybe 3 on 1,000, but it is three nevertheless. Now, the multi-year innovation program on the other side does not yield as many ideas in such a short time. It takes time. Ideas need to be nurtured. They are half baked. The idea generator may not have the wherewithal to implement the idea. So there is a handoff. There is a, and if moment there is a handoff, there is a drop off. And all that happens, so the pace is slow. But when taken to implementation, the percentage of ideas that get implemented over the number of ideas that get generated are definitely higher. But the question is not one or, but to take a hybrid approach. So at the client level, division level, project level, or a factory level, one needs to run both in tandem, using hackathons as a means to feed into the larger grassroots innovation program. It's not either or, it is together. That's what I would suggest.
So I hear you, but I want to follow up further. When we talk about employee motivation for innovation, majority of people come into initiatives like that because of their intrinsic motivators. They are individually, intrinsically driven to solve a problem, to learn something new, to see what's going to happen if they try to do A and B on a certain process and see what the outcomes are going to be. So they are genuinely curious as well. But then when you talk to people who have participated into the challenges, into the hackathons, if you go to Reddit to see what they write about them in general, the biggest complaint, or like not complaint, but the biggest critique that they have is that nothing happens afterwards. And this is what has come to be referred largely as innovation theater. People join with a lot of excitement, but what excites them even most is the impact of the ideas that they have shared or the prototypes that they have developed, the digital version through hackathon, that it gets developing. It enters the developing cycle afterwards and grows as a product, as a solution. So how do we set up initiatives like that for more success? What is that scaffolding that we build that follows the awards and gives these solutions a chance to live? And this could go back also to the quadrant that we talked in the previous episode. Maybe something starts as on the lowest left quadrant, low impact, low effort. But through experimentation and through iteration, it continues to show potential for something more. So how do we create like that scaffolding that truly gives a chance to meritorious solutions or prototypes that have been sourced through activities like that? Because at the end of the day, an innovation challenge, a hackathon, it is a sourcing mechanism. But when you add the prize or the award to it, you turn it into an incentive mechanism, because now you're adding the extrinsic motivator to already intrinsic motivation that people have. But to take this really through to the impact that everybody's looking for, how do we build the scaffolding?
I think, it's not an easy question, and I don't think I have a straight answer, but I would tell you what works.
Please.
And that, you know, pure innovators or the innovation pundits can veer off into innovation for innovation's sake, the innovation purists. But in a firm that's primary aim is to remain profitable and return good shareholder value, innovation for innovation's sake is not the way to go.
No.
Innovation for the sake of furthering the business, solving client problems, and making an impact is the way to go. Now, when running hackathons in particular, it's important to set the context right up front, saying, look, there will be thousands of ideas that come here. Not all can be accepted. Only ideas that are immediately implementable, that have a business impact or a client impact or a safety impact, etc., will be taken forward. But everybody who contributes is recognized and appreciated. If that language and narrative is set clearly in the beginning, then people don't go out thinking that it is theater. It's only when this is not made clear to associates, they come in thinking something and then they expect something else, and something else happens in terms of two implemented ideas out of 1,000, then you find disillusionment among the participants. So, what I have realized is set the narrative clearly, transparently, and then people are okay.
And you can send the evaluation criteria clearly and
Upfront.
transparently,
Yes,
of course, upfront, but you set them clearly and transparently when you know what the problem is, meaning the root cause of the problem is. You know how solved feels and looks like, and what will determine that it is solved.
that's
So
right.
that's why sometimes it's like I take always examples of the DARPA's challenge for autonomous vehicles. It was simpler. Like the prototypes need to pass autonomously the Mojito Desert, not Mojito, Mojave Desert line of 130 something miles. If they pass that, it's done. But if they don't, then it is. So that's why, like, when you know the problem, sometimes it's much easier to set the objective criteria and take them through. But then this brings me to the other bottleneck that come to initiatives like this. Like maybe hackathon, especially when you have people in group, like can produce like a lower number of submissions or ideas. But how do you evaluate hundreds or thousands of ideas in spite of having transparent criteria communicated early? How do you make sure that each idea that comes is objectively evaluated or assessed? Like,
See, that's in a non-Gen AI world, that was a problem, especially as the large firms, like the firms that we all know, India origin IT services firms, are pretty large, and the foreign ones are large too. So rating, ranking, shortlisting thousands of ideas humanly is not possible. So you always have a gap in terms of the ideas generated versus ideas implemented. And the gap need not be all are unimplementable. The gap normally is unevaluated too. That is but natural in a large enterprise. But with agentic AI solutions AI and agentic AI solutions coming in, that can be easily scaled now. Now, as long as the criteria for evaluation is well set, AI can be trained to go through these ideas and then uh, rate and rank them on a 10-point scale based on how you have set the evaluation criteria on innovativeness, replication ability, impact, safety, intellectual originality, etc. AI can rank it very quickly. And then, based on the rating that the engine gives, certain things can go into human evaluation and implementation, such that every idea that comes into the platform is touched for evaluation is a problem that can be solved now, which I've seen solutions that work fairly reliably.
so I've been on the side of having to, first of all, screen
Hmm.
hundreds and hundreds of submissions or review hundreds of proposals uh, that, first of all, check whether they are solving the problem that we asked them to solve. Because people will seize their opportunities. You never know, because that's sometimes the opportunity to come onto your radar that they may have something that could be valuable for you. So having a chance to been through that, and then having been through situations when ideally, and we try to stick to that, that we had at least two or maybe three different people evaluate each submission, then I know how labor intensive that part could be. So you mentioned that Gen AI can help with initial training. Have you had a chance to see Gen AI structure this process or like do this first screening of the ideas? And is this one of the ways to bring generative AI into to
Of
support
course,
innovation
I've
processes?
seen it work uh, very well, at least 7 8 months back, or if not more. Which means, what I'm saying is almost a year and a half, year plus old. It is eminently possible. I've seen it work well. I've seen some of my teams have even used it to embellish ideas. Now we'll talk about incorporating AI into the innovation cycle, where the AI can now tell the associate, look, you're trying to solve this problem, but why don't you try this? Why don't you add this? Why don't you drop this? And then as he does that into his idea, he finds that his score keeps going up. The implementability and impactfulness of the idea improves. And at some point he says, okay, let me submit. So it's eminently possible. I've seen it work. I've seen it work well.
And it can work better in the future. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
but does generative AI or agentic AI in this case eliminate the human evaluation, or do you think that it should still complement the human evaluation of
No, no,
submissions?
no. You can't eliminate human evaluation. It is for first level screening.
Perfect. And in your example, do you remember what was the percentage of submissions that agentic AI uh, passed to the human evaluation
You know, I
after
would give a
screening?
suggestion there. Uh, Using agentic AI solutions to give a pass-fail decision is risky. Now, I am now wearing my responsible AI hat, given my wider experience in delivery excellence. I would not suggest that an agentic solution is used to give a pass-fail response, basis which the past ones go through a human loop. Instead, I would use agentic solutions to give a continuous ranking on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 15, based on preset logics and algorithms and rules and models. And then a human decides based on the quantum of ideas he has and the bandwidth that he has to evaluate. Hey, I have, let me take a pure business approach, right, to this problem. Let's assume I am business unit A, you are business unit B. Both of us, I have 10 people in my core team that can evaluate. You have 3 people in your core team. Both of us have 500 ideas on our plates, rated and ranked by the AI engine. Now, I know I can take the top 100 and evaluate. You may want to do top 100, but you don't have the bandwidth, so you take the top 10. So, continuous ranking using an engine and then applying the management bandwidth and resources to decide at what level you will take a slice is better than using AI to do yes, no. I would leave the judgment of where to draw the line to be decided by the leadership team of that particular unit based on their management bandwidth, their resources, etc., rather than leave AI to take that decision.
I so agree because even in my line of work, I like people will have very often tendency, even in a smaller challenge, to come up with criterias that are very subjective to evaluate. Say like the innovativeness of an idea or like feasibility or viability. Like let's say like for desirability, we're not checking because that's to be checked afterwards during the prototype phase. But like it's very individual how much you decide whether something is innovative or not, because it depends on our individual experiences. So like saying yes or no is so binary that it will omit more than eliminate the non-aligned submissions. So having a score, the scaled scoring system does provide some granularity to see the variance between the submissions and have a clearer picture of how far you want to go, like, or which batch you want to pass on to the next stage. And I think with this
It,
one, then
just 1 minute on that. The beauty of a continuous score, which is done real time, as I am suggesting the innovative idea on a platform, is this, and I've seen this happen. As I'm typing out my ideas, etc., and embellishing it, let's assume two arguments. One, whatever I do, the score doesn't go beyond 4 on a scale of 10. I will choose not to submit. So, in a way, that real time assistance and scoring also filters out at the point of origin, at source, unimplementable ideas from coming in. Two, as I am developing, since I'm using assistance from the engine to embellish my ideas, make it more implementable, what goes into the system is that much more robust.
This is like as people having personal advisors or personal mentors, like whether they're solving on their own or whether they are in a group. And now
Yeah.
I guess that they're all using language as the medium of communication with the agentic AI to develop the idea. They're not building a physical prototype, but still working on the digital and with the language. It does provide that opportunity to help them push their own boundaries at the spot of ideation and come up with higher quality ideas. But then what it's also like, grabbing the train of thought from the previous idea, what I realized is that when we have this kind of like very granular ability to evaluate, let's say like in 1 to 100, your idea scored 87. And you decide that you want to submit it at 87, you don't want to go till 100. Then as a leadership, you may communicate at the very beginning that you don't want all ideas to come at the 100 scoring, because then it would come across as rigging the system. It would make the job even more difficult for both agentic AI and evaluators. But the leaders can communicate that from the very beginning, they are going to look at all ideas that score between 80 and 100, for example. However, like this could come across as a shortcoming if you don't manage well, because then you're just letting people know that only this batch is going to come, and then they either push harder to develop better ideas or they just give up because for some reason their agentic AI is not helping them come with an idea that is over 80 on the score.
You know what, Illyriana, I was smiling because I have not done this before, but if I were to do it, I would break the convention in some way, which is this. Let me explain. We are all conditioned to think in bounded conditions: yes or no, black or white, 1 to 10, 1 to 100, etc. What if we can design an AI system that is boundaryless? That 100 is not the maximum number. Nobody knows what the maximum number is. You set a nice evaluation parameter. It could be 10, it could be 1,000, it could be anything. And then you rate and rank based on the top 100 rather than 87 on 100. So if we remove the denominator thinking completely and unbound the system, then you will solve that problem. But I have not attempted this, but that could be one way to, not to enable people not to play with the system.
I would totally go with that model if I'm launching a challenge that is one phase. And so it's one phase, and whatever generates one phase, that's what we are going to work with. But if I am to design a challenge that is on 2 or 3 phases, I need to transparently tell the solvers
yes.
what score needs to be achieved on phase one, what
That's right.
on phase two, what are the evaluation criteria for each phase, because they need to know
That's right.
what is the journey set for them. So then, plus they need to know whether they will have mentors or whether they will have some support or whether they have some budget to build the prototypes, like something like the Adobe's Kickbox entrepreneurship program. So, but this also like enables us to like just dive deeper that whatever we have done and shaped the process on our own so far as humans, even the design process of these experiences can be enhanced with the use of AI. So you mentioned the agentic AI to help the screening. You mentioned agentic AI helping people go on with their ideas as act as their advisor. Nowadays, I've been part of vibe coding challenges myself. What are some of the ways that you're already seeing that AI can help the innovation process, the grassroots innovation, the innovators in to continuously enhance our capabilities and not substitute the human from the innovation process?
You know, AI can be used both in, I would think, should be used in identifying the problem space to start with, which means identifying the themes, shortlist it through human intervention, move it into a hackathon or an innovation initiative, and ideate. Then use AI to embellish, rate, rank, shortlist the good ideas. All this has to happen on a platform. And then the shortlisted ideas go to a human interface in interface to just make sure that they apply some prioritization rules, and then comes back to the innovator with the suite of AI capability that is available on a company's platform for him to now take the initiative to convert that idea into a working product. Now, I'm talking about IT. I'm talking
Mhm.
about technology. What I'm saying may not work if somebody is making, bikes on a factory floor, and that has to be addressed differently. But in the tech space, uh, use of AI to take through the whole cycle and enable the associate without depending too much on his bosses, his organization, resource allocation, etc. Using AI to convert it into a near working solution might do two, three things. One, reduce the lead time from idea generation to idea implementation. Two, reduce the number of ideas that don't see the light of day, because somewhere in this they'll get filtered out and not suck up bandwidth all the way down. Three, from a prototype that comes out of this engine, the lead time to implement it could also be dramatically lower because the surround pieces are in place already. So I think uh, use of AI right across the innovation life cycle, all the way down to implementation, is the way to go for services and the tech industry, based on the little
Mhm.
experience I had. Now in pharma, healthcare, manufacturing, to travel and tourism, energies and utilities, it might operate differently. But use of AI, I think, is super important.
So there is an opportunity that I'm seeing, and I'm not certain myself yet on that. For organizations that have been implementing active innovation programs for several years by now, and let's say, like for those, we We can see that they have a very solid innovation culture, distributed innovation capabilities across the organizations. I see that AI does provide the space for even faster identification of the problems and then opening them up to company-wide solvers and innovators. So like having like a permanent ideas or problems marketplace that people don't necessarily have to wait for a call to come from the leaders, but something may pop up. Somebody may report, a leader somewhere may immediately recognize that, validate that, yes, this is an important business problem, push to everybody in the company who has the best idea, because if we solve this one in the next week, then the best solution will get the reward A, B, and C, or just A, or, can shape that reward and recognition process and the evaluation. So I think like this is something that we still have to see happening, but I'm wondering, like, for organizations that don't necessarily have this, do we still encourage them, support them, empower them to continuously repeat and refine their internal hackathons, internal innovation challenges? And my question is like, how do we inspire their leaders?
We missed another significant contributor to this whole journey, that is the partner ecosystem. The
Okay,
the the
help me
innovation
understand.
the innovation labs in universities, the startup
Mm.
ecosystem, right? See, there's so much of innovation that is going on outside the four walls of our firms. And in today's world, incorporation of AI is one important step for sure. But I think incorporating the startup innovation ecosystem uh, into a firm's innovation journey is also very important to move from a bunch of adjacencies to transformative innovation that bring business value. And to my mind, the especially in services firms, that the transition from a grassroots-led incremental adjacency to transformative innovation that is augmented by the external innovation ecosystem, be it labs, be it universities, be it the startup ecosystem, will make the move to large transformative innovations. I think if we don't leverage AI is one part for sure, but the startup ecosystem, that whole ecosystem outside a firm, should be brought in to drive the transformative lever. And I don't
Uh,
think firms are doing much there, because you have the not invented here syndrome, you have contractual, bottlenecks, you have intellectual property bottlenecks, etc. So these two operate as two different playing grounds. I think the more we bring them together in a deliberate fashion, the more value will be for firms. There are some
from
firms
my
that do a great job, but many struggle.
From my perspective, opening up to startups is the highest model of open innovation that
Yeah.
any organization can leverage. And what I'm focusing right now is to inspire them to open up internally and activate the internal innovators, because when you do it internally first, you know what does it take to take idea from the idea to a commercialized or deployed solution, depending if it's internal improvement or external market performance improvement. And when you understand that, then you know exactly, because what you're learning when you're doing it internally, you're learning is what does it take to integrate and to implement that solution. A lot of companies there are out there that work successfully with startups, but one of the most frequent critiques, or not critiques, but the challenges that I see that people come in the field is the very different mindset of innovators in startups and innovation leaders in the corporate world. One is very bureaucratic with multiple layers of decision making, while the other one is very agile. So they both need each other for different reasons. So I hope that all the experiences that different corporations and startups and universities have had so far have by now identified what does not work, and hopefully we'll see more of successful collaborations, because when you collaborate with a startup, you're not starting with an idea. You're starting with a prototype or with very early stage, already validated in market or about to be validated in market solution. So as a corporation, you're leveraging somebody else's investments. So when you start bringing them in, I'm leveraging the term from the impact investment world. You're paying for success. You're paying already for results. It is a win-win solution for all. But what needs to happen there is patience from the corporate, patience from the startup leaders and founders to find their common language, so they don't get lost in translation while speaking the same language. So that is definitely something, and I see more opportunities also with early stage entry level recruitment. So instead of going through conventional recruitment of early talent for the organization, you can leverage challenges to identify the teams that you can bring into the organization to continue build what they already built as a challenge during their studies. So hopefully we'll see more of that. So we're coming close to the end of our second part, Alexis. But before I ask you the last question, is there anything else that you would love to share about activating and managing and driving the growth of grassroots innovation that you wish I asked, but I did not ask?
No, I think, I think that we pretty much covered quite a bit. What I would stress on, if we were to parse whatever we have discussed so far, the baker's 13 dozen is critical. But even within that, for a services firm, what is critical is to change the narrative around what constitutes innovation. That is
And definition.
that
And define.
definition of, yes, it includes let's make things better, incremental innovation. It includes let's make things different, adjacent innovations. Let's make new things, transformative innovations. And the number and volume across these three will be dramatically different, starting with a huge spread in incremental, and as it goes down to the single digits in transformative. As long as this narrative is well understood by the leadership that is setting this in motion, I think the rest will fall in place. If we make a mistake here and get muddled in our own thinking and look for results in the wrong places, then that will be a handicap for the grassroots innovation program right through its journey.
And a handicap before it even starts.
Yeah.
So cannot agree more. Alexis, and in the second part of our discussion, we touched about on the innovators, the scaffolding, and taking the solution like from idea to a product through through a grassroots innovation program. But what is one question that you have still unanswered? One that you are still wondering about this aspect of grassroots innovation, the post-reward one, that you would love to pass to the audience for them to answer?
I will ask, I will put forth a thought or a question, but I will also give my answer, but let the audience come back with theirs. Then we'll see. So I would like to learn. And that is this: when do you close an innovation program? Do you run it for perpetuity or do you close? And, what about the day after? That is something one has to think through.
It's so philosophical, so essential. I am so curious to read or listen what people are going to respond to. But you said that you had an answer, so like, give me your answer.
My answer is, as a leader running a say, grassroots innovation program, I think it's very important to rebrand, redefine, relaunch, and completely reset the whole narrative every 3 years. Because initiatives such as this that touch the whole organization can become mundane very quickly. So fresh perspectives have to be injected, and I would think change the leader. Don't give it to me if I have to run it for year 4, 5, and 6. Give it to somebody else who's good at it, who brings fresher ideas, who rebrands it, repositions it, re-energizes it, re everything, and relaunch it. Only then the underlying innovative spirit can be sustained and driven forward.
Uh,
I don't know
this
what others will
means
have to say, but let's see.
no, but I like your response because this means that you have to innovate how you are innovating.
That's right. Nice way to
Because
put it.
innovating is not a stagnant, static, one kind linear process, but you have to continuously to innovate how you are innovating. And in my point of view, in my advocacy about innovation, it's about distributing the innovation capability across everybody in the organization. And that does not mean that everybody has to innovate all the time. People can innovate once a year, twice a year. It depends on what issues or opportunities to engage with problem solving, inspire them, drive them, and so. But that
You know
was
what? Before we close, I'm reminded of, and I've said this to my teams all the time, what Jack Welch wrote and did during his heydays leading GE. In one of his books, he says, every year or every once in a while, the leader should go out, sit on a beach, and think of his business and ask this question, which is, who is this idiot running this business? And reinvent from there, however uncomfortable it is for businesses to do well. That applies to businesses, that applies to initiatives, that applies to everything that we do. We should have the ability to look at the mirror and say, who is this idiot running this every year? And then we'll come back with new answers, new roadmaps, new pathways, new everything to do what we were doing the last year. And that is when real success comes.
that is very profound, and you have to be a very courageous leader to be able to ask that
Yeah.
question.
But you're asking to yourself. So I think it's possible.
Exactly. Alexis Samuel, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I'm so thrilled that we had a chance to unpack an ounce of your wisdom about grassroots innovation. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Illyriana. It was a pleasure talking to you. Let's see what the audience have to say.
Let's see. If the first episode gave us the blueprint of how to activate grassroots innovators, this second one gave us the story of those people who make those blueprints come to life. Alexis was honest about one thing that we rarely hear spoken out loud, and that is that not all grassroots innovators come. Activating grassroots innovators is hard, slow burn. It begins with skepticism because people are busy, but more than that, they do not always believe that the organization will do anything with their ideas. The turning point is not always the campaign or the branding exercise. Rather, it is when someone sees their peer go up to stage, the recognition. It is when they realize that what is being recognized is not the genius, but rather the willingness to think more creatively, more daringly, more carefully, more innovatively about the work that they are really already doing. And that is the shift. and it points to something important. The biggest barrier to grassroots innovation is never the shortage of the ideas. It is shortage of the belief that your idea belongs in the room. This is the most powerful lesson that I am taking away from this conversation. And as tradition goes, Alexis left us with another question that he would love to hear from you, because this is a question that he's been sitting with and he does not have a clear or final answer to yet. So if you have been in innovation management space for a while, or if you have led an innovation program, when do you close the innovation program? Do you run it perpetually or do you stop? If you do, what do you do in the day after? So what do you think? We would love to hear from you. We would love to read your comments, read your messages, or listen to the video recording about it. Just tag us so we can follow up with you. And if this conversation sparked your curiosity to learn more how you might activate your grassroots innovators, go to opensaltstudio.com or activateinnovation.org, because we help leaders with or without innovation to build programs that turn that innovation potential into a movement that lasts. I'm your host, Iloriana Kachaniku, and this is Activate Innovation Lounge podcast. Follow us wherever you're getting your podcast, and until next time, stay curious and keep activating.